All right, Mr. Meyer, we're live and ready.
Okay, sounds good. We'll go ahead and call tonight's meeting to order. This is a regular meeting of the Seldovia City Council for Monday, September 25th, 2023. Time is 6:01 p.m. And we'll go ahead and do roll call. Keithley?
Here.
Sweat?
Here.
Rojas?
Here.
Kennedy?
Here.
And Swick is absent, I believe. And Peyton.
Here.
Okay, we have 5 out of 6 present tonight, with member Swick being absent, excused absence. And if one of you would join us, Heidi or Liz, lead us off for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. And as I had stated earlier, item C, excuse absences, will be Swick. Item D, agenda approval. We'll go ahead and look for a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I make a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve tonight's agenda. That motion was by Keithley with a second by Rojas. Any further discussion on the agenda before we vote? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote on the approval of tonight's agenda. All those in favor, Keithley? Sweat?
Aye.
Rojas?
Aye.
Kennedy?
Aye.
And Peyton?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes with a vote of 5 in the affirmative and 1 absent. Item E, consent agenda. All items under the consent agenda are approved with a single motion, no discussion, and 1 vote. A council member may request to remove any item for discussion in a separate vote. Items removed from the consent agenda will be placed under new business. Tonight's consent agenda consists of item 1, approval of the minutes of the regular meeting, September 11th, 2023. Those are found on page 5 of your packet. Second item is ordinance introduction, and this will be for ordinance 24-03, an ordinance of the City Council of Seldovia, Alaska, repealing Seldovia Municipal Code Title 15 entitled Harbors and Boat Moorage, and reenacted Title 15 entitled Port and Harbors to substantially update and clarify vessel impoundment procedures and proper use of harbor facilities. Recommended for public hearing will be on October 9th, 2023, and that's found on page 8 of your packet. No resolutions. So that is tonight's consent agenda. Does any member wish to remove any item for separate discussion at this time? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and look for a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda by Rojas, second by Kennedy. Any further discussion before we vote? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote on the approval of tonight's consent agenda. All those in favor, Keithley?
Aye.
Sweat?
Aye.
Rojas?
Aye.
Kennedy?
Aye.
And Peyton?
Aye.
Okay, motion to approve tonight's consent agenda passes with a vote of 5 in the affirmative and 1 member absent. Item F, mayoral proclamations. We have none tonight. Item G, public presentation prior notice. Looks like we have 3 tonight. The first one is going to be Aviva Braun with the National Weather Service. And it looks like she has joined us.
Yeah.
Hi, Aviva, were you able to join us? We have no sound if you are there. How about now? Can you hear it? Can you join us now, Aviva? There, we can see you, but still no sound. Oh, okay.
Just have problems.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're trying to get the sound working here, Mayor Campbell.
Okay. Yep. Well, we also have Miss Brenda Alberg in the audience while we're waiting, Mr. Mayor, if that helps.
Yeah, we can do that as well. Why don't we do that while Aviva's trying to get her sound fixed and coordinated? Okay, well, let's go to Brenda Alberg with the Kenai Peninsula Borough Office of Emergency Management.
Good evening, everyone. I am the emergency manager for the Kenai Peninsula Borough, and thank you for giving me the time today updating you on the Siren project. We started this project actually about 2 years ago in a phased approach, moving from the old system into the new system. And that included some grant funding that we've received, federal pass-through money from the state Homeland Security, as well as through NOAA to not only replace the current system, but actually add 2 additional sirens. So fast forward, and not only were we able to evaluate and confirm the need to update the system, but also to confirm a couple of different areas that we could add 2 more sirens and then potentially in the future add more as well. What I like to do is equate our old system as having rabbit ears, and now we have Netflix. It's been a significant change in the operational choices that we have with the new system. That, of course, includes not only the siren here, but in Port Graham and Nanwalek, each having 1 siren each. The 2 new sirens that are included are the one at Homer's. It's a private boatyard off of Kachemak Drive to help amplify sound in an area that was identified as a gap, not having the ability to hear the sirens. And then the other one is for Anchor Point at the mouth of the Anchor River. So those are our 2 new sirens. The other 14 sirens that have been replaced are still in the same areas. We utilize the same locations for the old sites. And one thing that I wanted to come to you guys tonight about is currently we have memorandum of agreements with each one of the cities that have sirens in them, both Seward, Homer, and Seldovia, in the event that we wanted to move forward in a joint fashion of how we would work these sirens together, whether it's independent of themselves or in a group, or if there's additional needs that the city could see using the siren for. So right now, the bones of the agreement say that essentially, yes, we work well together, and anything moving forward that we would identify additional costs as well as a standard operating procedure to both function under, essentially a playbook. So I offer to you guys tonight, not so much the time frame to decide what that is, but to offer the opportunity for us to work together, the administration and myself, on conceptualizing what else this siren could be used for here in Seldovia. and who would be responsible for those operations at a local level. And it has that capacity, whether it's something that would be used for wildfire and what that tone looks like, in addition to tsunami, or if it would be to move a crowd in the event of another danger, being able to use the audio system to effectively alert the community. I think there's several opportunities that this new system has that we didn't have in the old system. We have a finished installation officially last week, and now we're moving into that operational phase as I continue to work with each one of the communities on what that looks like at a local level. And that's why I'm here tonight. Lastly, I'll just point out that I provided in front of you the latest RAC card that was developed that's going to be distributed to all of our coastal communities. One is for our tsunami readiness, asking folks to be prepared on their own, because we are well aware that sometimes sirens or technology doesn't work. So what can you do to understand those natural indicators that may ask you to get to higher ground, whether it's 100 feet up or 1 mile inland, to move away from a potential tsunami wave? On the back side of the RAC card is universal. So because we have so many international or non-English speaking visitors, that they can clearly understand what's expected of them when they visit our area. The other RAC card is for our Ready, Set, Go program, specific to evacuation and the different levels of evacuation, as well as reentry. We should always be in some state of ready so that we are prepared. And then, of course, going through each level of evacuation as it relates to the specific response. And I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
Excellent. Thank you for that overview of where we're at and what you're working on. Any open it up for questions, comments from council?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, Brenda, you mentioned one thing, and I was just maybe getting a little bit more clarification. When you mentioned about the options of what the siren could be used for other than what we have specifically now, which is, I think, a great idea. And then you had mentioned something about who would be in charge of it, who would be running it. Could you clarify what you were saying there? Are you talking about personnel, or could you elaborate, please?
Well, if when we come to an agreement between the city and the borough, that would include a standard operating procedure, an SOP, that at a local level, whoever is given that access to create some sort of functional message at this local tower, that they clearly do it within the guidelines that both the borough and the city has established. So I won't point out who that one person may be so much as the process.
Okay. Okay. All right. Yeah. I didn't know if you were talking about a personnel or I understand now. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anyone else? Questions or comments?
Yeah, I have a question. So has the new system been tested yet?
Yes, it has been tested several times, including both in the lab and in the field. And thank you for that question, because one of the things that we used to have was the monthly test that was audible. With the new system, we won't have to do that. It's all done through quiet tests. You won't have to. Now, if this community says, no, we really do want that monthly test, and that's something that we can customize specific for your needs. But the new system doesn't require that. Excuse me. The other thing that the new system does do is it allows us to see in real time what it is or isn't doing, and to give us alerts via text message if there's something that's down or needs to be addressed immediately. It also has other forms of redundancy, because we well know that anything that's cloud-based may and will eventually fail. So we also have a radio option, as well as satellite and internet connectivity. So it tries to initially, when the system is asked to deploy, it's going to find one of those forms of redundancy to go through. And if one doesn't, it's going to go through to the next one until it creates a connection with one of the 4 options.
So the whole thing will be clearer to hear? Because I'm just a block down the street
Mhm.
and last few times I was sitting there and it took me a few minutes. I'm like, is that the siren?
And was this with the most recent testing that was done?
That was the last, yeah.
It would be good to know where you live in relation to where the acoustics are set up, because it's really, it's for an area that we want folks to move from. So I'd appreciate working with you afterwards if I could to get your information.
Well, I used to be able to hear it loudly all the time. And then over the years, I've noticed it's gotten less and less. That may be a failure in the whole system. I'm not sure.
With the old system.
But yeah, the last few times, when the siren went off and the person speaking, I could barely hear it. And of course, usually, you know, I'll have the TV on or the music or something, so I'm not listening for that. And I don't always feel like an earthquake. So I don't know anything's going on until I hear that siren. And like I said, the last time it must have taken, I don't know how many minutes before I was like, oh, I think that's the siren. Then I had to go to the window, open my window so I could hear it more.
And are you referring to the old system?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's not going to be happening
No.
anymore. Okay. That's what I was wondering.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, Harmony, you got a question?
So actually, I've mentioned it a couple times to the tribes, to Mark Ball, who works for the tribe in their emergency department. I work in an office that's right below the school, right out on the waterfront there, and I can't hear the current tests that are going on. We had a couple of days where the system was kind of running through a series of tests in recent history, and I couldn't understand the system at all. You know, and I'm in a quiet office, you know, I'm just doing computer work. I don't, you know, there's no reason why I shouldn't be able to hear it that I'm aware of, unless you're stating that. I'm not sure what you mean by you want it to be louder in places where you want people to vacate. But I mean, again, I'm on waterfront property, you know, in an inundation zone if there were an event to occur, and I couldn't hear or understand what was being broadcast.
And you're talking about the new system or the old system, Miss Harmony?
The new system.
Thank you. I'll look back and check the records of when it was tested, and get back to the city on that.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thanks, Harmony. Vivian, you got your hand up?
Yeah, I would agree with that. The new system, was it tested just in the last month or so?
I don't recall the actual dates. I'd have to get that information and get back to the city with it.
Yeah, so I think we need to do some work on that, because I also had to wonder, I said to myself, I wonder if that's the new system, and it really was not as loud as the old system, and I'm on the boardwalk side of town. So it's something we do need to check into. And I guess with the city, I would almost have us talk about the discussion of having the test once a month, just as a common practice to make sure things are rolling along like they should. Just something that the council can talk about with the bureau once we get set up. But thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Vivian. Yeah, I actually just, thinking real quick out loud here about the annual or the monthly test, the actual audio piece of that, or audible monthly test. Myself, I actually like that, because I think it's a good way to make so that residents know the system is actually working, and then we can, just like this situation here, we could actually identify if during the test certain parts of town are still not able to hear it. It may be a work in progress for us a little while. I don't know if we might need a second a second audible device as part of the actual siren or what. Yeah, because down on Main Street where I'm at on the waterfront, it's the same thing. We have a heck of a time, I believe, during this last round of testing, hearing what the words were actually saying. We could hear the echoing, but couldn't really make out what the words were during the testing. So that would be unless there were specific reasons that people, had objected to. Obviously, it's in the middle of the day. And I think it's a good idea. The other piece of that, in terms of the custom use of the audio system, to me, it makes good sense. I don't know if there's an added cost to that or anything, or if it's just simply fleshing out an agreement between the borough and the local munis. Is that the case? Is that what I'm hearing? It's just more on the agreement side, or is there an added price component to that as well?
There's an added price component. We would be asking our cities to help contribute to the maintenance cost, the annual maintenance cost.
Okay, great. Heidi, have you started digging into that at all with the borough and exploring additional capabilities and stuff? And I guess what's your thoughts on some of that?
It has been part of the discussions as the system's been installed, but we haven't gotten to the discussion about any details yet.
Okay. All right. Anyone else? Questions or comments?
Yes, sorry, Mr. Mayor. I have another question. I guess I'm a little confused. When was the last when did we have that last tsunami warning? How long ago was that?
The one about a month and a half ago.
So
July
that's the
15th.
new
Yeah.
system?
That was the old system.
Oh, okay, because that's the one I couldn't hear. Okay, just wanted to clarify that for me. Okay, thanks.
I think, Ms. Jesus, you have a question?
Yeah, I just had a question for you, Brenda. As far as what other capabilities, like Heidi was talking about and Jeremiah was talking about, do you have any samples of what other communities are doing or what they're using it for, or what other kind of, obviously not early school out, things like that, but what kind of things would we look to consider that might be helpful for our community?
Good question. What I would recommend is doing an evaluation with the community of what is it that they want, because that's where the buy-in starts, so that when programming is done, then people know how to appropriately respond to that specific tone, whether it's the tone that's specific to tsunami, or if it's specific to wildfire, or even an alert tone that says there's a message coming next. That really starts at the community level. From there, I would say with the new system, there's several options that could potentially meet those needs. I don't want to say the sky's the limit, because that's certainly not realistic, but even something as simple as creating an announcement to move a crowd, depending on where those speakers are, could be an option. We have communities, they actually use their sirens to call a football game. So, it really depends. It's still the use of that siren, and as entertaining as that may seem, that's how that community owns that siren, knowing that it's multifunctional. And there's, I think, a sense of skin in the game when a community has the capabilities and the involvement in defining what its uses are. So that's how I would answer that question. Mm-hmm.
Great. Yeah, no, that's a good, some good feedback on that. Any additional questions? Anyone else in the public, either online or in person, that wanted to weigh in?
None at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Go back to council. Anyone else on council?
Campbell.
Just general thoughts, I guess, on expanded use of the audio system. Yeah, go ahead, John.
I don't have any particular thoughts about that, but I think it's certainly worth the professionals looking at it and see where the city might be able to benefit from something from it. I don't know if they use them in other communities for initial fire calls, that kind of stuff. But I certainly wouldn't want to miss out on the opportunity that might benefit us all.
Yep, no, good point. Yeah, I guess for my thoughts and comments from listening to the dialogue back and forth, I mean, it seems to make full sense for the city administration to, try to work with the borough, to find out more and to, work through whatever timeline it is, work through an agreement. And a part of that process is to get buy-in from the community, then obviously, get the word out, maybe that's part of the process, before ever coming to a final agreement, in terms of usage and stuff. But yeah, no, I'm in favor definitely of moving forward with something to explore, expanded use of that system if it's certainly something that can help enhance communication with the community in times of, certainly multiple different types of disasters and or maybe just there's some, general announcements from time to time that warrant the use of that. Yeah, go ahead, Harmony.
Sure. Yeah, I do like that idea of the wildfire. We've been so fortunate on our side of the water to never experience that. And I feel like if ever there were a day that we did, heaven forbid Rick wasn't around to like knock on doors and make sure we were all aware. Johnny on the spot there, but that's going forward something that we had the option to pursue. I think that's would behoove us to have that sort of safeguard in place.
Yep, no, that sounds good. Okay, any other final comments for Brenda or questions? Okay, great. Brenda, do you have anything final in closing tonight?
No, thank you for your time.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for the presentation and I appreciate all the information. And yeah, I look forward to the administration working through the rest of the process with you. Okay, we'll go ahead and try back with Aviva Braun if she was able to get her audio portion working.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yep, we got you now.
Great. I apologize for that. I will have to speak to IT tomorrow. I called in on my phone, but thank you for having me tonight and for being flexible, having me on. If I could, I'd like to share my screen so I can present it to you.
Okay.
Okay. Can you see my PowerPoint?
Yep, now we have it.
All right, so I'll say my name is Aviva Braun. I'm what's called the Warning Coordination Meteorologist for the National Weather Service in Anchorage. Our mission is the protection of life and properties. Our vision is to create what's called a weather-ready nation where we all work together to protect and prepare for the most vulnerable, so that the most vulnerable communities are prepared before extreme weather and water events. And it takes a village to do this. We expect everybody to be a steward of public safety, including community leadership, FEMA, emergency managers. All of us take part in being part of this public safety mission. So there's a few things I wanted to talk to you about today. And one of them is our tsunami warning dissemination process. So tsunami warnings start by being issued by the National Tsunami Warning Center, which is a partner agency under the umbrella of the National Weather Service, but not my office. So the National Tsunami Warning Center are trained scientists who have gone to school, studied geology, studied hydrology, and are able to assess threats as needed. Within their office, they have a protocol that basically is if there's a large and significant earthquake, they then have 5 minutes to assess the threat and issue the tsunami alert, advisory, warning, whatever that threat may be. But they give themselves a 5-minute threshold to make that decision. So when they go through this process, they issue any one of 4 products. It could be from an information statement, there's no tsunami impact, you're okay. It goes to a watch, we're worried, please stay aware. It goes then to the next step, which is the advisory, and then the warning, which is the immediate danger. And then they go through this process a number of times. So they get the initial earthquake, they assess it, they make the first alert, and then they go through the cycle of alerting people in my office included, partner briefings, the State Emergency Operations Center, media partners, and so forth until they get to the final message and then can go back to normal operations. Okay, so there's a lot on the screen, and this is the primary reason why I wanted to use a PowerPoint, is that the dissemination process is complicated. And I hope that this helps kind of put the picture together. But it starts with the National Tsunami Warning Center issuing a warning. So this is for warnings and not for advisories or watches, which do not trigger WIAs. So the first step is that they issue the warning, and it goes to the NWS gateway, which is also known as NOAA Weather Wire. And when it hits that platform, it goes to 3 separate places. One to third-party software users, and then gets disseminated from there. It goes to iPause, which then triggers your phones, and that's called the Wireless Emergency Alert, or WIA. And then it within the same time frame also comes to us in our office at your National Weather Service forecast office in Anchorage. When it comes to us, we then take a look at it, figure out exactly where they're warning for, and then we reissue it, which then goes to NOAA Weather Radio, and then ends up as banners on your local radio station and TV stations. At the same time that all of that is happening, the other platform that is triggered is the NAWAS. And then this is where we get to have partner phone calls where the SEOC is notified and where we can ask questions directly to them through the NAWAS capabilities. So hopefully this slide makes sense to everybody. There's a lot of redundancies. I know Brenda just spoke about having redundancies and why that's important. It's important for this in the tsunami warning process as well, because should one fail, there's a multitude of other ways that we can receive the warning. Some of this does lead to overlap and notification. And I will also say that because of this process, hopefully you hear that there's an initial office of issuance and then our office issuance, and then it going through the iPods and then to your cell phones. Through all of those different points, there are different areas that we serve. And so there are possibilities for some notification over alerts and excuse me, I am forgetting my words, but it allows for some of those redundancies to occur. I'll remind you that the WIAs will not be triggered for advisories or watches. So tsunamis are one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about, and I'm really happy that you invited me to come speak to your city councilman. Apologize, I'm not there in person. I was there on the 12th, but was only able to meet with Heidi, who's there in the room with you. But the other thing I wanted to talk to you about, well, there's 2 other things. Right now I'm in the midst of working with Heidi and your city for you all to become what's called tsunami ready and storm ready. And both of these certification processes and designations are really important to community safety. Tsunami ready and storm ready communities have a strong commitment to implement the infrastructure and systems needed to save lives and protect properties when tsunamis occur, and to protect communities from the onslaught of severe weather through advanced planning, education, and awareness. So both of these designations are voluntary recognition programs that promote hazard preparedness. And it's a collaboration done between federal agencies, state and territorial agencies, and local community management agencies and community leaders. So again, this idea that it takes a village, this is a voluntary program. It means that you've gone through the length of getting certified, and some of those necessities to become certified include a community must maintain 24-hour warning points, support emergency operations centers operations, define hazard zones, produce evacuation maps, install evacuation route signs, participate in outreach, which includes schools within the tsunami hazard zones, and then amongst other things include dissemination of the warnings, so you help amplify the message, but then also have formal operations, emergency operations plans, scripts, and all hazard mitigation plans. So it is quite a certification process to go through, and I believe that the city of Seldovia is well on their way to becoming certified very soon. The tribe is now in the approval process as well. So once you're certified, you receive a sign that says that you have been certified as a community. And then we get to, there will be a formal recognition letter that is sent to you. And you will also have the opportunity to decide how you want to celebrate that certification. It could be really hyper localized and quiet, or we can make something loud of it and do some sort of formal ceremony if that is of your choosing. So besides tsunamis, we forecast the weather at our forecast office, and there are many ways that we can help serve your community, and that can be done through our website, through low bandwidth needs online, and through our Alexa weather information line. We also have a non-app app that basically uses your web browser but behaves like an app. We are on Facebook and Twitter, so you can see our graphics and help disseminate the message in that form, and also user graphics that we've already worked on. You can call and speak to a forecaster, you can email and speak to a forecaster, or you can chat us using NWS chat. And these all are things that are open to community members, except for that last one, the NWS chat. That chat function is for partners and community leaders only, and not open to the general public, because otherwise we would be inundated, but we assume that our community leaders are then going to disseminate the message after requesting information. So some of those other services that we provide to community leadership is INWS platform, which basically says if you circle an area, geographic area, as soon as we issue a product, you get it to your email or your phone, and then you can disseminate it to whomever you want, but you don't have to go looking for our warnings. It comes directly to you when we issue it. We also have something called a spot weather forecast. You'll see in the next slide that we issue forecasts over 3 kilometer by 3 kilometer grid points, which is quite large, and sometimes areas can be averaged out. And this gives you the opportunity, if there's a search and rescue that needs more involved weather information, or a hazmat incident, for instance, this gives you the opportunity to request more tailored information for your mission. And lastly, we do situation reports and event support. So this is what our website looks like. If you click on your area, this is the box that shows up. So again, this is that 3 kilometer by 3 kilometer box. The mountains are in the next grid box for us. So if you wanted something more poignant I would understand it if it was for search and rescue or something mission critical. On our website, you would get a point and click forecast. That's how you would access what we do every single day. This is our non-app app, which is mobile.weather.gov and accessible by anyone within your community. I'm going to kind of blow through this so that I don't speak forever, but we're also on Facebook and Twitter. And these are some of the examples of what we've done over the last several months. That middle one is what we did earlier this week, giving you a look ahead to what we're expecting so you can plan and prepare. This is our chat function, and you can see that we have we can speak to each other and have whole conversations over a low band. If low bandwidth is what you're after, this uses very little bandwidth. I spoke to INWS. I spoke to Spot. And this is what our situation reports and event requests would look like if that was something that the community requested from us. And lastly, I'll say that we have a program called the Weather Ready Nation Ambassador Program. And if the city of Seldovia chooses to join, basically what this means is on a quarterly basis, we send you infographics that can be used based on the season and are hyper useful because you don't have to reinvent the wheel that we've already been working on for a while when it comes to safety and weather. So we strive to make sure that all of our communities are weather aware, are ready and resilient, and have all the information that they need to make the proper decisions for themselves. And with that, I will open it up for questions, and I wanted to put our office's information up there. That is the phone line directly to a forecaster. We are staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And that is our community leader and partner line. So specific for you guys and not the general public. And then my information is there on the right if you wanted to reach out to me. I'm the outreach coordinator for our office and program coordinator.
Awesome. Thank you. Lots of good information. Exciting to hear about the Tsunami Ready and our hopefully ability to obtain that status here in fairly soon. That's super good, as obviously that's something that has impacted our community significantly and continues to impact us even as recent here as this last one here a few months ago. So where we had a little confusion around town on that one. So anything obviously we can do to, streamline and make communications better for all of our citizens, the better. So we'll go ahead and open it up to council. If there's any questions, comments.
I must have answered all the questions in my presentation.
Yeah.
That I overloaded everyone.
All right, anyone from the public that wishes to have a comment or any questions?
There are no hands raised, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. All right. Well, you did a pretty thorough presentation. So looks like everyone's got their information this evening. Again, appreciate your presentation, and yeah, good update, and glad to know that things are moving forward, and appreciate your involvement in helping our community.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me this evening.
Okay. Have a good evening. All right, next on the list here, item G3 for public presentation prior notice is Miss Jenny Chissis, resident, request for base rate, utility rate, and she had submitted a letter that was found on page 66 of your packet.
Mr. Mayor, Ms. Chissis is here in the audience as well.
Okay.
Good evening. I don't necessarily need to reread the letter that we submitted, but I did want to open up for questions in regards to kind of where we were coming from, even though I think I did a concise effort with this. Basically, we've lived in our house since 2004, and since 2009, when somebody wanted to rent our space, I moved my office out of the space above our little shop and moved a tenant in there. And that tenant was there for 7 years. And we are more than happy to pay an additional residential fee for somebody living there full time. No questions. And when somebody moved out, when she moved out, we actually just moved someone else in right away. And then that person moved out and we had a lack. And so there was a time where I called the city and said, we don't have anybody. And we took off that second rate, residential rate for that period of time, which seemed fair to me. And so when we got another tenant in there, we got it back up. So that's kind of been the history in the property. We are on one water meter, not meter, but one water line. Thank you. And yeah. And so it's just one property. Our laundry facilities are in that building. There's no way to isolate that building or not use it. So it's just a part of our home. And it seemed totally fair to me to us to pay that additional fee. This year, when I contacted the city to say we don't have anyone in there, we're not planning on renting it right now, and we're just using it for our family. And we'd like to take it off for the time being until we get someone in there again, if we choose to do that. And was told that that's something I had to bring to council. So this is different than what's happened in the past. I didn't think it had to come to council for this. And so that's kind of where we are. We are zoned residential. It's not a business up there. It's just a rental when it is a rental. So I just wanted to offer any opportunity for any questions. I don't know, Sunny, did you want to add anything? Okay.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Jenny. Harmony, you have a question, and then I want to get some clarification from Heidi.
Yeah, I kind of do have a question. I think it's kind of strange that it's coming to council. I don't see, I'm in favor of them switching back to single residential, as they are the only residents there. I was wondering if maybe in future, when they have renters, if the renter can apply for that address and put the bill in their name, and then when they change addresses, conclude it that way. So maybe Jenny doesn't have to go through this hoop every time. I don't know if that's something that is reasonable at the office level, but maybe that would help in future.
That's a great idea. Thanks, Harmony.
Okay, Heidi, I know this is not as simple as it seems. I wish it was. If you want to chime in with the city's interpretation, kind of where we're at on this and the way that the administration looks at something like this.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this has been ongoing for the last several years since the city switched to the new flat rate implementation of billing. So we have multiple properties throughout the community that have dual residences or duplexes in them that pay for a small commercial rate for having 2 residents in use, along with our waterfront businesses that, whether they're in use or not, that they pay a commercial rate. That's because we went away from monitoring toilets and offices and other, there used to be, if you remember, the fee schedule had a pretty complex way of having flat rates within a building space. And we went to a more simplified model to reflect just services. And the duplexes, for instance, are on one line, but whether they have somebody in there or not, they can utilize that space for residential. So for consistency and moving forward with billing in that consistent manner throughout the community, that's how that has proceeded forward since that new implementation of the system came on. And the reason why I came to council is in speaking with Jenny, who I appreciated hearing from, that I did a deep dive of code and the fee schedule and spoke with our finance officer, Jan Yeager, and there is not a precedence at this time to not bill for somebody a building, whether it's a duplex or two buildings on a lot, as just one service for that lot. That's something that we can explore in the future. I know that we have had feedback on our billing system. Nothing ever quite meets the needs of everybody. And I'm happy to have a broader discussion. But at this time, without that precedent, it's brought forward to council just as to see if council wanted to waive that second building unless utilized by a tenant. Keeping in mind that we do have a precedent for these kind of discussions coming to council in the past. For instance, we have the 3 buildings that are over on Shoreline. 2 of them are in condemned status, according to the previous owner, and only 1 in use. So we only bill for the 1. That was a decision that council granted, as well as we had a former building that was a duplex that they actually tore down walls to make it into a single living space. And so that one is now just a single residence as well. And those were quite a while ago. But in the desire to be consistent and be transparent, bringing that forward as the policymakers to decide if that is a waiver you guys want to grant in this situation. Thank you. And a bigger discussion, hopefully, in the future.
Okay, thanks, Heidi, for sharing this administration and the city's perspective on that. Let's see, Vivian, if you got a question, then we'll Harmony. I think your hand, is that a new hand up, Harmony, for a follow-on question?
It is a new hand, yeah.
Okay, Vivian, why don't you go ahead and your question, and then we'll go to Harmony.
Yeah, this issue has come around and around with the city for years, and how we came up with our commercial rates, small commercial rate or large commercial rate. It's a difficult situation where the city tries to accommodate everybody, and we find ourselves troubleshooting and trying to change things every time one customer changes what they're doing. And I mean, the reasons why we came up with the fee schedule we have and the commercial rates that we have was like it was so confusing and so complicated for what we had going on. So we try to simplify it in a way. And so I guess it's difficult for me to think that the city has to jump through hoops, I'll say, every time somebody changes, every time a resident changes their situation. It's a difficult situation for the city to be in. So I'm not really sure if this is something that the city council should deal with, or if it should be coming out, reading what we have on the books and enforcing what we have on the books. I'm just in a quandary because we have worked so hard for years trying to be fair and make it equitable for all and make it as simple as possible for the city office, which has struggled to try to have fees that work for everyone. It's a difficult situation. I appreciate where the justices are at, but I also have a hard time flip-flop and having the city flip-flop all the time. But that's it. That's my comments for right now. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Vivian. Harmony?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really appreciate Vivian's perspective. She's been on council a long time. I remember looking at those codes. I think Jen worked at the city when they started, like when those codes were still on the books. There was like water, and if you have public shower, do you sell loads of laundry? Like there was a lot of room for interpretation on those codes. But I've been in the Chesapeake space. It's not, I mean, it's barely a mother-in-law. It's not like a completely separate living space. I mean, it was a couple of young women who've lived there in the past. And so I guess I don't need to be offering that much information about their personal space. I apologize for that. What I feel in this situation is that we have people who are hearing a need for residential space, and they made space for that residential need. And now that they are not using that space in that way, they would like to use their property, as is their right, as a single home family. I think that's right. I think there's a precedence in general, in cities and other places where if you have a tenant property, we could have tenant, a tenant would go in and pay for their own water and sewer. We don't have individual meters. Maybe that's something that if they're going to rent that space out in future, they could pursue that. I understand that code takes a long time to process and to change, but we're also in a place where our economy is changing so much so fast, and we don't want to discourage property owners from being inventive and also willing to open their doors where they can. So I guess that's a really complicated way for me to say I'm in favor of supporting their wish to revert to a single family utility. And I would also be in favor of the council looking at our code again whenever that's appropriate, looking at our fee schedule, and trying to grow with the economy, trying to grow with the time, and trying to make our codes fit the changing landscape of what it looks like to be residential. I know that was long. Appreciate you guys.
Okay, thank you, Harmony.
Mayor Campbell.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
So a question to the city manager, is there other residential properties other than the one mentioned over on the slough that had multiple buildings on it and multiple water bills?
Yes, we have about a dozen of them.
And so are they all under the commercial rates as well?
Yes.
Well, but yet the Chisholm's property is zoned residential.
Correct.
Yeah, I'd be in favor of exactly what Harmony's talking about as well.
If I may, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, go ahead, Heidi.
I always like to wait till I hear kind of everybody's thoughts. I know that this has been something that's been looked at. I had talked to Heidi about it when I had prior people come and talk to me, and I think it's a work in progress. And I don't think we're at the perfect place with how everything's set up. And I think that whether it's residential, wanting to then help bring in, create housing, creating a little business, or businesses having more businesses, we're in a place that it's not encouraging that necessarily through that. And I'll use myself as an example, just because for me, I choose to be at to say like we operate year round. So for me, I figured from day one when I walked in and I read it, I'm like, okay, small commercial, because this is my home. I live in there, but I'm running this business out of it as well, that I have other people, multiple rooms. And in my mind, I was like, I could, if we're only really running it for the 3 4 months maybe that we're really actually bringing in revenue, then that revenue is what's, paying that higher bill. And the rest of the year, it's just 2 of us in there. When sometimes I have got 12 people plus us in the home using it for that short period of time. But for me personally, running my business year round is beneficial. So I'm willing to pay that extra and be at that small commercial because I might have a guest in December or I might in January. And so I do that because it's beneficial to me. However, for other people that may not even, they have their shop open for the three months, or maybe they just have somebody, it's seasonal, somebody to come in to work for the summer. And so they're going to rent their mother-in-law apartment out. To have to pay that additional when they're not getting income for that, that's where I look at that as not being correct. Because now you're saying because you helped bring in, create a space for someone to live, which we need in the community, or bring in sales tax revenue. A lot of the businesses that's happening at the higher time, bringing money in. Now it's making the cost of living here more expensive, or running a business here more expensive. And so I think it should be relooked at to where there can be those adjustments to it, to where it's fitting what you're doing at that moment. And in the case, if somebody doesn't fit the mold, because they're not always going to fit the mold, that it's okay to then, say we can have a discussion, whether it's just with the city administration, or if we decide that it's something that should be a community discussion, so that then if there is a exception made, because not everybody's going to fit the mold, and something might come forward and you're like, oh, well, that's totally a different scenario, then it can go on file in their file that like, okay, this was approved, we're going to go ahead and move on this. And it might be something where it's for a period of time, like the Chiswick is, where it's like, okay, right now, the way the code's written, they're supposed to be paying for 2, but you say, no, right now, you're fine until you have another resident in, you let us know. And, we don't like additional fees, but I know sometimes you need that incentive to make sure people tell the city when a change has happened. So then in the fee schedule, you have 30 days to alert the city if you're going to open your business, or, early, or what day you're switching over to that other fee schedule. So that's my 2 thoughts.
Thank you, Ashley. Anyone else on council? I'll chime in here real quick. Yeah, so one thing I've never liked about, and I think, Ashley said it well. If you just go back and I've looked at it today, I've got the fee schedule in front of me. You've got a base rate residential, base rate commercial, small commercial, and large commercial. None of those actually have to do. Let me rephrase that. So they have to do with they were intended to reflect usage and amount of usage and or higher usage, but the way they are defined doesn't necessarily mean that a large commercial is going to have more actual use and impact on our system than a single family residence that's got 4 or 5 kids. It absolutely is. They're contrary to that with the way we define them. So yeah, and I don't want to open up Pandora's box here, but it's never been quite perfect, and it won't be quite perfect, because we have a lot of interesting builds, if you will, here in Seldovia. I certainly don't want people ripping walls out to get around the code, and I expressed that before when that came up. I think that's BS, and there's no need to do that. When we go back and we look at our definitions of dwelling units, of occupancy, there's any number of definitions that need to be looked at. And obviously that is front and center right now with the zoning discussion going on. And that's even going to get more complicated when people really start digging into that, way more than this little issue right here. But I would agree. I mean, in this case, their home especially is an interesting one, just as his home. I think the way I understand this is now they would be looked at as a duplex, whether unoccupied or not, just the way their home was built. Again, is there, there's two people in there. Is there more use as a duplex over a single family residence? No, there's not. I guess long story short here, I'm in favor of allowing them to go back to base rate residential under this scenario. And then the same thing, if and when a renter comes in, it goes back to small commercial. I think we do need to try to make another round, and that some of that may be spurred by some of the discussion, and it will be germane what's going on in the planning workshop right now with the business discussion, because definitions are going to be a major part of that on the groundwork on how we move forward with some of the zoning issues, and it will certainly reflect over to other parts of our code if we're going to be consistent within our code. So yeah, I agree. Under this situation, I don't have a problem with going back to the base rate residential. But I do think we also need to this needs to come front and center again for another tweak, if you will, at some point here in the future.
Mr. Mayor?
Yep, go ahead, Bobby.
Yeah, I just want to say, we worked long and hard to work all that out and to try to satisfy everybody whose situation was a little different, which a lot of them are in town. I don't deny that at all. And we had a lot of public input. I mean, a lot of the public was to have an input. It was out there. And I don't know. I just don't really agree with that. But if you guys want to continue to have 50 discussions on changing this ordinance constantly, then more power to you. Thanks.
Well, I got to answer back to that, of course. I mean, it's definitely not 50 discussions to constantly change it. I think this has been now for a couple years, as a couple other council members alluded to here. Things are changing every year within the scope of, Seldovia's economy, global economy, everything. Nothing's getting easier. Certainly nothing's getting easier to do business. I think that discussion, I've heard from multiple people about other ways to make Seldovia more business friendly. There could be incentives through water and sewer, et cetera. I don't think this is out of line for the request. So, and this never was perfect. It never was perfect. It was better, but it never was perfect. Anyone else? Questions, comments? Okay, anyone else from the public, either online or in person, that wants to weigh in?
Yeah, we have no public comment at this time.
Okay. So we'll bring it back to council. If we'll just make it real simple here. If we're gonna take some sort of action on this, then I'm assuming, Heidi, we're gonna need a motion to approve the request and a vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is under presentation. So if you guys just want to give a consensus, administration can move ahead with that process.
Okay. So is the consensus going to consist of four people? what are we gonna need for Heidi for?
It looks like we lost Vivian. I think it can just be majority at this time, Mr. Mayor. It's not a formal action. So if there's a majority consensus to move forward, we can utilize that and then work forward in the future on how to make this system better.
Okay, sounds good. I can count. So I had, looks like there was John, Ashley, and Harmony were all in the affirmative, and Vivian was opposed. And I'm assuming, Vivian, you're back. So I'm just doing the count right now. It looks like we're just looking for majority consensus. Looks like John, Ashley, and Harmony were in the affirmative. And I would put yourself and I assume Bobby in the opposition, unless there's any objection to that. It looks like we would have three in the affirmative to approve their request, two opposed to the approval of the request. Any objection to my tally? Okay, Heidi, it looks like, yeah, it looks like we would have a majority consensus then to approve going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Jenny, any final questions, comments from your end?
No, I just want to say thank you for consideration, and I definitely want to be a part of the conversation in regards to codes and zoning, because these are questions that come up all the time in my business, and I think that everyone here does a really good job at working through it along with P&Z, and but I also think in a small community it is important to be flexible and realize that we are a big basket of fruit. We're not just a box of bananas, you know, and we have to address each situation sometimes differently. And having that flexibility, I think, gives a lot of, it helps for people living in a community like this. That really helps. And I appreciate your time and thoughtfulness. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate your closing comments. All right, we'll move on to item H, public presentations for items not on the agenda. Do we have anyone from the public, Liz, that would like to comment?
No, we have no public comment for this time.
Okay. Go to item I, Committee and Advisory Board reports. We have Walt Sonnen for the Cook Inlet Region Citizens Advisory Council. And there's a written report that he submitted on page 67. Let's see, Walt wasn't going to join us tonight, right?
No, he is not going to make it tonight.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it was just a single page from Walt there on 67. Everyone can take some time to read that. I don't know, did anyone have any questions or comments on that report? If you've already read it.
Not at this time.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to item J, administrative reports, the finance monthly report. That's also a written report. And that's on the next page. That's on page 68.
Mr. Mayor, if I'm looking at this correctly, the Charles Schwab account, we've made $31,648 since the inception of this account. Is that correct? Or because we put in 500,000, is that right? So we made 31 on interest.
Mr. Mayor, I would have to verify that, but I do believe that's correct.
Okay, seemed like the number was bigger than what I remembered, but Okay, that's great.
It really is fairly volatile, if I may, through the mayor. Jan watches it, monthly. We watch it go through, and sometimes we're up and sometimes we're down. Of course, never below the 500,000 mark, but it's it differs greatly month to month.
Right.
Probably not as volatile as one's 401k though. So, but it's like your
True.
401k. Don't watch it every month to month or you'll just get sick.
Yeah, Heidi. Oh, Mr. Mayor,
Yep, go ahead.
just want to ask Heidi a question. So the 2% sales tax revenue fund, that is the leftover from last year,
Yes.
the 2%.
Yes, so
Okay.
the 2%, we have decided administratively, even though we get the reports for fiscal year, because the 2% falls, because the fiscal year falls right in between both the second and third quarter, we are able to make that determination more easily if we wait until December or January, once we have finalized numbers for both second and third quarter, and then utilize that calendar amount for what is beyond the greater payment to move. So that was for 2022 calendar year, not fiscal year, if that makes sense.
Yeah, okay, alrighty, thanks.
Any additional questions for anyone on council regarding the finance report? Okay, we'll go down to item J2, the Harbor Master Monthly Written Report. That's on page 72. Heidi, it looks like the new POS was up. That was a square, correct? Is that what they went to?
Correct.
Okay. So it
And
looks like that's getting close to getting online.
Yes, we had a little bit of break with Harbor Master Jan Peterson being away at the Alaska or the Harbor Masters Association conference this week, but she will be back next week and right back at it.
Great.
Can I make a note, Mayor Campbell, that we do have new no wake signs that have arrived that we'll have installed out on the breakwater, on the break wall coming into the harbor, and then as well as on the dock. We've seen more and more recently boats going by waking that dock. And I think there's just a lack of awareness of that being a no wake zone as well, especially if somebody's utilizing the dock or under, we've had divers under there or individuals working on equipment, and they still needs to be no wake past the dock, the city dock.
Okay. Yeah, no, that'll be good. I do notice she had a note here with on a nasty note, our resident weasel is back and in high form. She needs to be evicted ASAP. She has started being aggressive, started spraying, and the harbor shed is disgusting because of her. Maybe within my cat managed to bring us a dead weasel into our house the other day when we were gone. So maybe with any luck, he took the weasel out. We'll see.
One can only hope.
Yeah. All right, any questions on the Harbor Master monthly report? Okay, we'll go ahead to head down to item J3, Public Works Maintenance Report, and that's on page 74. Yeah, I saw I was wondering what was going on with the backhoe. It looks like that was a tire explosion I see. So looks like that got fixed up, borrowed one from Hopkins and got a new one coming.
Correct.
And with the boat haul out, it's the small one that's broke right now, but the large one is available.
So the small one was the one that was in need of repair, and it is back in working order as of Friday.
Okay.
We have some pretty good tides happening towards the end of this week. And Diane has been in constant contact with customers, scheduling those. We have quite a list going on right now. So you'll see many boats moving out of the water at the end of this week and potentially next week.
Okay, yeah.
I have a question, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, so Johnny keeps telling me he's gonna be done pretty soon, and I keep telling him, no, he's not. But so we argue about that all the time. But what is the status of more staff, more maintenance staff?
Yes, thank you for the question through the mayor. We have operator Brune from last year who is wanting to come back on in October. So we're hoping to have him on. He's discussed potentially coming on full time, and we'll look at what that looks like. We also have one applicant for the position, and had a great discussion recently with the Homer city manager. And part of the discussion that came up was that they had an intern program that worked out really well for their public works, because they're seeing some of the same kind of turnover and needs for staff in their community, as well as, I mean, nationwide really at this point. But they had a young lady who was interested in working into a public works position. So they had like an apprenticeship and moved her up and through it. And that may be something that we could look at with this individual or future individuals, just as another option, some additional training we could offer and build them up into a position. I think may be an interesting way to explore filling those positions in the future.
Right. And I have one more question. The course that Jordan is going to be taking for the water treatment 2 course, will that elevate our best practice scores?
It will, yes.
Okay.
So you'll see we have a new best practice score in the laydown, and we had our off-cycle scoring complete. And a portion of that is operator certification. We receive a 7 out of 10 right now, which means our primary operator is certified to the level of the water system, and the backup operator holds some level of certification in water treatment or distribution. And I should say it will, as long as we continue with our alternative method of supervision with an operator from the city of Homer. Is outside of city of Homer hours, done separately, but we have an operator who is our system supervisor with a level, I think it was a 3 or a 4. So if we kept him, then we would have
Right, and that's the
2
guy from Homer.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I knew that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we have Radzi as well, who's working on certification. That's going to take a lot longer because the
Thank you for your service.
certification time takes a long time. But he does is working. Do you have your provisional one? Is that provisional one? And we're working towards filling in some hours to get him closer every
Alright.
day. It just takes time.
Good, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments on the maintenance report? Okay, sounds good. Let's see, item K, public hearings, none. Item L, unfinished business, none. Item M1, new business, resolution 24-06, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Seldovia, Alaska, amending the City of Seldovia snow removal policy. This is going to be found on page 75 of your packet.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So if you go to page 75, you'll see it's a short resolution, and this is more of a housekeeping issue, I hope. Just updating the snow removal policy with really the big change being that we clarify a process of having a primary operation during a snow event or right after a snow event of just trying to clear and open the streets. And then following that, the cleanup operation. So you'll see that on page 76 under what is the city of Seldovia's goal. We also added in some additional street information and under which streets are cleared first. We have the priority map, but I thought it was pertinent to also include it under the policy itself and include a few streets that weren't listed before, just trying to kind of clean it up and keep it relevant. The big thing that we are that I think Operator Cameron was excited for as well. You'll see on page 79 is the snow removal priority list, and that's again just updating streets and including the comment of how many miles city streets are maintained. 4.4 miles city streets and additional 0.72. That's an approximation because we only do a portion of airport. State roads located within city limits. And through this process, I was able to look at Soldotna's, Anchorage's, Homer's, some other municipalities' snow removal policies. And I found it interesting to note that they also, those cities did have state streets that they maintained as well. So this is not unique to our area. It seems like it's a common practice to share that load because the state's going to be clearing highways and big through roads first. For instance, they clear Jackloff first. And so by having the city utilize our equipment to clear town, it happens a little bit quicker. But the really exciting thing is page 80. I know Jordan Operator Cameron had created a hand-drawn map last year for the discussion, and I took that along with notes from a discussion I had with him and updated it to a more digital map. Of course, it's not truly beautiful because we don't have ArcGIS, but it's a step up. And on that page 80, you'll see priority 1 being brown, priority 2 being yellow, 3 blue, and green is 4. And a lot of those are substandard streets or culverts, dead ends, areas that we get to last. Black stars are our current areas where snow piles, and HDR was particularly interested in seeing this map when I spoke with them earlier. And then red, which is the newest thing on the map, and Operator Cameron requested that to be included, are areas where he wants operators to be extremely vigilant because they have HEA transformers, they have different pedestals, fire hydrants, just things that could cause damage if an operator isn't aware that that is a problem area. He did mention, I think I missed 2 on the map. There's one on C Street or towards the end of C Street that I didn't include, and then one other. So I'll put 2 more, be putting I think 2 more red dots on here. But overall, hoping that this is a useful map for the public and for operators to use. That way, moving forward in the future, everybody kind of has a general idea of how our operations work.
Thanks, Heidi. Any questions, comments from council?
If I may, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, go ahead.
I love this map, and I'm curious, just kind of after last year, and it being my first winter here, but knowing it was a big snow year and all the fun things that this clears up for people, of like being able to look at it and be like, okay, yes, I am, my street or this street is priority, this or that. If we could add to this, maybe it's like a backside or a little box in there, going through and highlighting like the gentle reminders to the community of things that usually come back to the office or to council, of like snow berms and things to do or not to do to help the city and each other, to try to get ahead of some of that before in this, utilizing this tool in that way of being a nice, gentle reminder communication. Because some people will read all of this if we send out like, oh, if you want to read this, but most will not. But we, even as like staff, like sitting down going, okay, what did people come in here and, ask about or complain about last year the most? And what can we highlight on there as the reminder for everybody so that they understand the policy or the things that can help the city crew do their job better. So.
Thank you, Ashley. Anyone
Mr.
else?
Mayor? Yeah,
Yep,
Mr.
go ahead.
Yeah, Heidi, I just wanted to clarify what you and I had talked about. I see it as if I'm reading this right, the public property is a priority 4. And we had talked about this building specifically here in front. Do you remember that conversation?
I do. That's a tricky one. They do try to plow it pretty quickly and sand it, but we're the shoveling of the sidewalks and the approach area is a little bit more of that's going to take city staff because the guys are
No, I'm not talking about that. I don't think anybody minds. And we'll just have to tell whoever is the kitchen helper, they might have to go and shovel a little bit. I'm talking about right up to the curb. That's where we had the problem with people falling because they couldn't see where the curb was and they stepped down too far and fell.
Okay.
And so it was just like if they could do that first thing, just scrape it and go on about their business. The rest of it, I mean, we've always done it. The kitchen helper has gone down and shoveled then a little walkway to that curb. So, and then the rest of it, can be done whenever. But that's the only issue that we have. That's kind of difficult.
Through the mayor. Thank you, council member Spud. I've made a note and we will take account
See
of that.
what you can do. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Questions, comments?
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, go ahead, Vivian.
Yeah, I really like to see this removal policy laid out, and with the map, it makes it very clear for people who want to see how the city of Seldovia manages their snow removal. So it is a housekeeping, but it's done very well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Vivian. Anyone else? Questions, comments on resolution 24-06? All right, I got to offer one comment just because it burns me. I'm going to let everyone hear about it. On page 77, the big bold section in the middle says you left a snow berm in my driveway. Driveways and snow berms. I'll read it. The city is not responsible for clearing snow berms from driveways or on lot frontages. There's obviously a lot more to that. I still, and it's not just Seldovia, it was the same way in Seward. I couldn't stand it and I would get infuriated. And I still do to this day, and everyone can listen to my rant. I don't understand how any municipality can take snow from the middle of the street and berm it 3 feet high, in this case, maybe 4 feet high, multiple passes on people's private residence where they can't get in or get out. I understand during a big snowfall, but even on some of the non-big snowfalls, it happens, and I don't think it's right. So I'm just throwing that out there. I appreciate what our limited small crew does, but there's times when I don't understand why it's not another pass to go through and clean some stuff up when I watch how certain areas are cleaned up and then other areas are just burned in from hell. So that's my comment. Generally on resolution 2406, I approve of that, but I do take exception to the driveway and snow berm piece of this because I don't agree with it. That's my 2 cents.
Mayor Campbell.
Go ahead, John.
Isn't that why we purchased the snow gate?
You said it. I didn't.
Yes. Mr. Mayor, if I may,
Go ahead.
the snow gate is included in paragraph 1, and I can, Homer had some better information about the snow gate and berms and how that works. But if you'll see in paragraph 3, it says, please let the city know if an impassable snow berm has been created through city operations. You know, and I think that that's the direction that we're heading, and that we tried to, it's not going to be priority number 1, you know, the priority number 1 doing Main Street. Priority 1 is not clearing snow berms on Main Street. So maybe that's a conversation to have, is what an acceptable amount of time or amount of snow to berm there is moving forward in the future. But certainly that's not the goal, is to make people's properties impassable.
Understood. All right. Any other questions, comments from council before we go to public? Okay. Anyone from the public that wants to weigh in on resolution 24-06?
We have no public comment at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Go ahead and bring it back to council for action on resolution 24-06. And I'll look for a motion to approve.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve resolution 24-06.
Okay.
Seconded.
Okay, we have a motion from Rojas to approve resolution 24-06 with a second from Sweat. Any further discussion before we vote? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote on the approval of resolution 24-06. All those in favor, Keithley?
Aye.
Sweat?
Aye.
Rojas?
Aye.
Kennedy? John, did you vote?
Aye.
Okay, and Peyton?
Aye.
Okay. Motion to approve resolution 24-06 passes with a vote of 5 in the affirmative and 1 absent. Okay, we'll go on down to item M2, resolution 24-07, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Seldovia, Alaska, approving the request for proposals or RFP for the 2023-24 snow removal services for the historic boardwalk / Bay Street. And this will be found on page 81 of your packet, and I'll let the city manager present.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as stated, page 81 of the packet, this is has come about after the budget discussion and approval for $10,000 in funding for snow removal services of the historic boardwalk Bay Street. If you turn over to page 82, you'll see the beginning of that proposal, asking somebody to plow the boardwalk once snow levels reach 3 inches or more. Oh, and it looks like I have a typo with it by the 6. That should be a 3. Apologize for that. It was originally 6, but when speaking with operator Cameron, he recommended 3 in order to be able to utilize whatever lighter equipment is being utilized to more thoroughly clear that area. I would point out 3 things that we did keep purposefully vague. One being, no, we didn't include a requirement for equipment. That way it is open for individuals if they want to shovel, they want to snow blow, they want to plow and then move snow with a bucket of some sort afterwards. It is a tight area, so snow is hard to push in there without some kind of a removal capacity, from my understanding, because of the railings and trying to get around the corners, but left that open to see what individuals' interest would be. We also left the dollar amount and vehicle for how an individual would be, what their pay rate would be, as in, I guess not wording that very clearly, as in if they want to have an hourly proposal, like, this a rate for however many hours, the rate for however many jobs, the rate for the whole season. It's really hard with snow. So just leaving that open in the interest of seeing what individuals are interested in, as well as the location. It does speak with Boardwalk Bay Street, and I'm curious to see an individual's proposal if they have interest in going beyond the boardwalk, up a portion of Bay Street Hill, whatever works easiest in that path of removing snow, knowing that it does need to be removed from the infrastructure. So leaving those open to hopefully allow for more individuals to be creative and provide that proposal, and hopefully getting some good service in that area moving forward.
Okay, thank you, Heidi. Any questions, comments from council?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I was looking for clarification, and I think you kind of gave it to me, Heidi. I'm not sure what we're looking for, but is the Bay Street, which goes down in front of my place down to Walt Martin's, and then it becomes the boardwalk, the wood. Are we talking that this person would actually do that portion also? The dirt part of Bay Street? Or are we looking at, is the city not able to push it down there? What's the status of that? Because I think it's a great idea what you just mentioned about snowplow. I mean, like a snowplow that can do it. Or it used to be back in the day, the city hired somebody with a 4-wheeler blade and just pushed it. So there's a couple of questions I have, and that is to what extent do we need the boardwalk cleared? And for what reasons? The fire department can't go down to a certain level. The EMS department can't go to they can only get to a certain point. So I guess I'm wondering how much of the boardwalk we need to clear and keep clear. Is it for keeping the weight load off of the boardwalk? But going back to, is the city not interested at all in pushing that snow on the dirt part of the boardwalk, and then letting this other person, hopefully somebody will take it on, do the actual wooden boardwalk area? And I know there's an issue about pushing any equipment down there, because then you have a hard time getting out of there. But anyhow, those are my questions, if you could address them.
Yes, through the mayor. Thank you. Great questions. So I think that Bay Street is, so that first portion, when you go down Bay Street and you are headed towards Stranix residence, is also Bay Street. And then when you take a right, it's Water Street. So I think that there is interest, if it was convenient and it helped in the snow plowing process, to also clear that portion of Bay Street for access in and out, or more areas to be able to push snow, that is open to being able to be part of the proposal from a bidder. However, the city will continue to maintain it. If it's not, just like the city will continue to maintain the boardwalk. If it's not, just not as, maybe not as frequently as what has been requested over the last year. We're seeing more residential usage. I've heard more in the last year than previously, enjoy walking on that area, utilizing that spot to get out in the community. So looking, one, for maintaining it for residents, and two, yes, to maintain the instructional integrity of the boardwalk itself. We do have some retaining walls below that need a little bit of work. I don't know that that's a heavy snow load or equipment's going to significantly impact them, but thinking of longevity moving forward. And then we do see some significant gouge marks that tend to be created with the use of the loader, which is our piece of equipment that we have to maintain that piece of infrastructure. As well as last year, we had railings that were broken because of the tight turnaround. So hoping that we'll have some interest in the community to maintain it with some smaller, more applicable equipment for that area.
Yeah.
Did that answer your questions?
Yeah. I didn't know because I really think the snow blower idea is something that there might be a few people in town who might be interested in taking that on and then shoveling it up a little bit. But if they had to do all of Bay Street, meaning leaving from the wooden part of Bay Street onto dirt, if they had to do all that, that's a whole nother picture. So that's why I was wondering, can the city run their loader down there, and or they have to back up with a load of snow? Is that something they can or can't do, or they prefer not to do it? I'm just thinking if the person who takes over, hopefully someone will step forward, could just maintain the boardwalk, the wooden boardwalk, that might have more chances or more potential of equipment that's not, I mean, we don't want any big equipment down there, but a snow blower or something that sort. I just didn't know. I know the city, I see them go down with a little backhoe, but I know it's always been an issue, not going down the boardwalk, the wood part, but just down Bay Street, the dirt part, and trying to get that access down there. But yeah, I'll be curious how this works out, and I really hope somebody does step forward, and hopefully this is lined out to where somebody would be receptive of taking on the job. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Vivian. Anyone else on council? Questions, comments? How do you have one? The last bullet on, let's see, under on page 82, other specifications and requirements relevant to the scope of work. So I think it actually goes to page 83. The last bullet says snow must be removed as opposed to plowed to a public snow disposal site. What is the thought on that? You couldn't snow blow it off into the water or snow blow it off into the vegetation or anything on the sides, or what's the purpose on that bullet, I guess?
Just that if you're plowing down on the dock, you need to be able to move it off of, I guess it's from speaking with Operator Cameron, the concern is that if somebody is plowing on those tight corners, you'll have snow bermed up and still on the infrastructure, which can create a problem. They've seen from what I've heard from Operator Cameron is that the best way to remove snow is to be able to lift it off of there, whether that's through a snow blower, through a little bobcat, some piece of equipment that can move it off of the deck, because you can't plow through the railings.
Yeah, okay. So it's specific to like leaving accumulated snow or berms, not specific. That's not specific to the entire route that you have to remove all the snow, as opposed to hauling. It says snow must be, it just says simply bullet, snow must be removed as opposed to plowed to a public snow disposal site. So that would tell me that like the entire route has to do that, but you're saying it's more along the lines of making sure you remove any accumulated berms basically.
Yes, and I can update that. Good point, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Yep. No, I just was looking for specifics on that. So, okay. Yeah, everything else, I think it's like any other RFP, right? You write it broad enough to gain some interest, and you leave it open enough to be able to negotiate, with what makes sense. Then obviously you as a manager, you've got to negotiate in the best interest of the city to make sure that the equipment, the personnel, and then the way, if it's a lump sum per hour, et cetera, makes sense for the billing portion of all of the work. So yeah, I think my opinion, it looks good. There's lots of information. I think it's good start, and hopefully we'll get some interest. Anyone else on council before we go to public? Okay, anyone from the public wish to weigh in on resolution 24-07?
Yeah, we have Mr. Jerry Stranick online.
Okay. Go ahead, Jerry. You're on mute. I saw your hand go down, you're still on mute. Jerry's searching for the mute button.
Can you hear me?
There we go. Now we got you, Jerry.
Okay. All right. So basic question is, I've invested a lot in this community and so forth, and my wife has too, and so forth. And anyway, we're down on the boardwalk, and I mean, this never been a problem before. They always did the boardwalk plowing just with a front end loader, and then about the last 5 years, they said, well, we don't have chains. So it says, wow, how much have changed? I volunteered to pay for the chains. They didn't, no. Anyway, so it didn't happen. And now it's like, it's so simple to do. I mean, but now you guys are going to outsource it or whatever. That's fine too. Number one, you have to stop people that are dumping on the boardwalk that create a glacier, so that can't happen. And so you have to recognize that. But it's very simple and it's operator oriented. It's always been a front end loader with a backhoe, and they managed to get it done for 50 years. I really don't understand why it's different now, but apparently it is. And if you want to sub it out to somebody else or whatever, just get somebody that knows how to plow a straight line, and don't point your bucket down. Keep it about 2 inches off the bottom, and then people can cross country ski there. They can walk there. They can do anything they want. I mean, an evening walk around that area is beautiful. And I just don't understand where the problem is. As far as fire and all that, that's a problem, because I know what's going to happen. They're going to save the house next to me, and they're going to watch our place burn. But that's another problem. I don't even want to talk about that, but it's a problem that hasn't been a problem before. How did it go on for all the years that I lived here, and now it's a problem? So it's operator error. You can talk to Jordan or anything and just say, it's somebody that knows what they're doing when they go down there. They gave the excuse they changed for a while. Now they got the chains. Now they say the chains are climbing them into the sidewalls and everything. It's operator. That's what it is. So I'm telling you, I've paid many taxes in this town. I pay close to $20,000 a year in taxes in this town, and I'm not getting what I really need is protection for my domicile. Let me put it that way. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jerry. Okay, anyone else from the public that wishes to weigh in?
We have no more public comment at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Okay, we'll go ahead and bring it back to council for any further discussion and final action on resolution 24-07.
Mayor Campbell.
If I may.
Yep. John, did you have a question?
Yep.
Yep, go ahead.
And is the concern due to the weight of the backhoe? Is that part of the issue? And is there wear shoes available for that bucket?
I'll have to look into the second question. The concern that we're trying to address is more frequent maintenance, from my understanding, and better maintenance without with less opportunity for damaging that infrastructure.
Does the weight have anything to do with it? The weight of the backhoe have anything to do with it?
I would say potentially, but I'll have to look back more into that. I don't have an
Okay.
answer for that one.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, John. Vivian?
Yeah, just one last word. I'm in favor of the resolution, but I also want to say, I mean, it's been an issue. I know Jerry isn't here during the winter time and generally hasn't been here during the winter time, but when my ex-husband was Public Works, and that was 87 to 95, it was a conversation that was happening then about the wear and tear and taking the city's equipment on the boardwalk. And now, 40 years later, that wood hasn't gotten any younger. So we have an issue that's been complicated with age and maintenance and wear and tear. So hopefully this will be a solution to keeping the boardwalk clear and people having access. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Vivian. Okay, any additional questions or comments on resolution 24-07? Okay, we'll go ahead and look for a motion on resolution 24-07.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 24-07.
Okay, do we have a second?
I second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Rojas to approve resolution 24-07. We have a second by Sweat. Any further discussion before we vote? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote on the approval of resolution 24-07. All those in favor, Keithley?
Aye.
Sweat?
Aye.
Rojas?
Aye.
Kennedy?
Nay.
Peyton?
Aye.
Okay, we have motion passes. We have 4 in the affirmative, 1 in the opposed, and 1 absent. Okay, that was resolution 24-07. Last item of the evening for legislation, item M3. It's going to be discussion, draft ordinance 24-XX designating North Fulmore Avenue and the historic boardwalk / Bay Street for pedestrian use only, sponsored by Sweat and Rojas. And this is found on page 87 of your packet.
I thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Councilmember Rojas, do you mind if I take this real quickly?
Oh, go ahead.
Thank you. We did put Rojas and Sweat on there as sponsors only in the interest that this topic came through originally through those council members with interest in being able to preserve some of these areas in town moving forward. Fulmore area being that Fulmore block street that's currently used as a bike and pedestrian path past Susan Lake, and the city's interest in wanting to build a boardwalk there and utilize that area more fully for pedestrian thoroughfare. I'll let Councilmember Sweat speak a little bit more to that and the development of that area, and then the boardwalk to help again protect that area and utilize it more thoroughly for pedestrian thoroughfare. I will say, first of all, that the language and the ordinance title leaves a lot to be desired. And initially, I think can be very off-putting. And secondly, I had another comment, but it's not coming to me right off the top of my head. After receiving this legal memorandum from our attorney's office, this was forwarded to them. Well, I'd have to check on the timeline, but I believe maybe even over a year ago, with just the initial question of what does that look like moving forward if there are areas in town that need to be designated pedestrian. And you can see in that legal memo provided on page 89 that is within the city's purview. After receiving it, I spoke to our attorney and had the question of, well, what does that look like for individuals residents who are living in that area who were required to have a driveway put in for their residential space, or that have commercial shops or ADA accessibility or maintenance. It seems like there needs to be some allowance for some motorized activity, which is why the black underlined is there. For authorized use by the city of Seldovia may be permitted for, but is not limited to residential access, ADA accessibility, and maintenance, snow removal infrastructure, with the idea being that if somebody has a need or a use of the boardwalk to be able to drive on it, that authorization can be granted for the city, specifically for those instances. And then in the future, if there are other instances that warrant it as well, and would allow the city to be able to post signs that say, no motorized vehicles without authorization, in order to preserve that infrastructure more. And I would like to open it up to Councilmember Rojas and Councilmember Sweat to speak more to the reasons why this came about. The last thing I would point out is that you can see in the ordinance under section 3, and this is per Seldovia Municipal Code, the proposed amendments contained herein have been reviewed and approved by the City of Seldovia Planning Commission as required. That step has not happened yet. So this is just an initial discussion to see if this is something that council even wants to pursue. And if that is the case, then to refer it to committee, they can work on language the draft ordinance to bring back forward to the council for further discussion. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Heidi. Go ahead and open it up for, if Rojas or Sweat wants to take first crack here.
I'll go ahead, Mr. Mayor. This came forward from the idea of the boardwalk needs to be preserved, and local traffic is totally acceptable, and the authorization from the city takes care of the locals who live on the boardwalk, who use the boardwalk. And mainly it should be a pedestrian traffic walking area. As Jerry Stranick said earlier, it's a great place to walk. And so people just, if there's a sign put up, people understand that it is a walking area, a walking district, not for vehicles to go through. There's been people who've tried to drive it and they've either bashed into the wood just because it's difficult to make some of those corners. So in my mind, it was easier to say, let's preserve the boardwalk, and let's and people won't have a problem with walking it at all. It's more enjoyable to walk it than it is to drive it. Local traffic has local traffic, they can use it. ADA accessibility is important. That's why it came forward in my mind that we need to keep the boardwalk in its best condition as we can. It's not cheap to replace it. And so if we can do little things to help with the issue of deterioration of the boardwalk, then this is one of them, I believe. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, thank you, Vivian. Bobby?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. The same, I guess, goes for the area around Lake Susan, which is Fulmore and Block Street. That area is, if you can imagine, which you probably can't because you don't live there, a street. Literally in your backyard, which would definitely be a nightmare for people that eventually, there's only, I think 1 or 2 other lots, the area down where it's gravelled isn't an issue, although the whole area is wetlands. So that's a whole nother ballgame. But it is a pretty cool place to go walking. Granted, there are certain areas just where the gazebo is, the entrance to there, that would need to be fixed because that area is lower than the rest of the walking trail. And anyway, the rest of it is pretty good. And it's a beautiful place to go walking. I think an eventual boardwalk would be really cool to go all the way around. I don't know, coming off Anderson Way, I guess it would be like a T and then go up the rest of the way. And then a little boardwalk down to the lake, which of course you can barely see right now because it's overran with willows, alders, and everything. And then there's the gazebo, which is hardly ever used, which could be a potential, if it had a little bit of maintenance done, it could be a potential revenue source for the city, just like the pavilion is. And there's lots of birds, lots of bugs, lots of dragonflies, lots of stuff going on there, which is really cool. And so I think to preserve that area should also be a priority, along with the boardwalk. Thanks.
Mr. Mayor, I think you're on mute.
Whoops, sorry about that. Thank you, Bobby. Yep, anyone else on council wish to have comment or questions?
Eric Campbell.
Yep, go ahead, John.
I guess my only thing, I don't have any really opinion about how I think about this, other than the fact is I'd really like to see a period where the folks that live on that boardwalk have an opportunity to provide their feedback before they're forced into something that they don't want to do.
Thanks, John. Yep,
Mr. Vince, if I may.
much agreed. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, just everybody remember that this is totally a discussion item, right now. And it's up to the council to say, yeah, let's discuss it even more, put it on the agenda, and then you get the input of the folks. So it's not pushing this down anybody's throat. This is just a discussion tonight. And then if the council agrees, we move it forward into a setting of with the public. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Vivian. Harmony or Ashley, any thoughts, initial thoughts? Okay, I'll weigh in. Yeah, I mean, I know it's purely fair discussion on just looking at it, from the standpoint now, I'm not super in favor of, limiting motorized access on the boardwalk section. Certainly if we got creative and, it was limited to, I mean, just like they do everywhere else around the state, they, instead of an outright ban, they limit it to a certain gross weight of vehicles. In other words, 1,000 GVW or less, or 800 or 600 or whatever it is, so where most of your ATVs and stuff will fall under that threshold, whereas full-size vehicles will fall over that threshold. Typically, I don't know. I like driving on. I don't drive on it very often with my, ATV, but occasionally I do. I know folks do. I take golf carts down there. I encourage all of our people renting golf carts to make that lap as part of their getting out and seeing Seldovia, and, always telling them, try not to leave your vehicle parked in the middle of the boardwalk. People are walking there, and then, be courteous and yada, yada. But, yeah, I think, you could do it, but if you put some sideboards on it and you had a weight restriction, or certainly that, that would maintain the intent of keeping the heavy vehicles off of there. And then again, like people to live on there. Like I know, Jake, I see occasionally he backs down there with his truck to drop heavy stuff off, and, then he's out of there. But I don't know how often full-size vehicles actually, drive down there and make the loop. So I think there's something, workable on that section. Might be a little different over on Block and Fulmore. Yeah, that does get wet and boggy back in there. That could get, and that boardwalk would probably be a lot different. Probably, something similar to maybe the old boardwalk that was there, something not quite pallets, but a little more than that, but some, free floating boardwalk type that, wouldn't even possibly sustain, four-wheelers and golf carts and stuff like that. So, again, I think it's, fine for discussion. It'd need a lot more work, obviously, from the residents and a lot more people, but yeah, that's my thoughts. Harmony, you got your hand up?
Yeah, I think those are all good initial thoughts. I do feel kind of leery about enforcing a rule that states people can drive on people can't drive on the boardwalk at all. As the mayor mentioned, there are residents that live down there, and we as a city do have code that states that residents has to have a place to park, at least I think it's one vehicle. I don't know if it's two, but that would be something that we would have to consider addressing before we move forward with something like that. And then as far as North Fulmore, the Fulmore extension goes, that road actually continues beyond, in front of Bobby's and the Hiltz's, and connects to that road that goes towards Jackie Taylor's place. It is actually a platted residential road, and there are residential lots on the lakefront out behind Bobby and the Hiltz place there. When a previous city manager Freelander and I were looking at funding a boardwalk there and what it would take to renovate the pavilion, which is one of my all-time favorite places in all of Seldovia. It was quite the process, and there was a lot of, I think Heidi will remember more of the details of that time, those discussions, but it is a wetland. There's a lot to consider with the Corps of Engineers, but also, again, it is a right-of-way. It is a roadway, and it behooves the city to allow people who own property and pay taxes to have access to their property. And it would be unfortunate for us to spend money and time on code that would potentially put back us into a corner that we would have to eat our foot on, unfortunately. So I think that's something to maybe dig a little further on when it comes to this discussion, is the North Fulmore extension. But there is, as far as that goes, a beautiful, beautiful right of way on the right where Fulmore ends and kind of walks towards that pavilion that would be considered like a sidewalk space. So you could still, that was our original plan with the ARP grant. You can still build up that area and still maintain the integrity of the wetland and the natural beauty of the area without impeding on future accesses. Anyways.
Okay, thank you, Harmony. Yeah, lots of good discussion points. Obviously, a long way to go on something like this, but I think it's definitely worth talking about. Let's see, any more questions, comments from council before we go to public? Okay, Liz, anyone from the public on that wishes to weigh in on the discussion for the draft ordinance regarding North Fulmore, and the historic boardwalk / Bay Street pedestrian access?
Yes, we have Miss Jenny Chisis.
Okay.
Okay, I just had three things in regards to the boardwalk. I'm in agreement with you, Jeremiah, in regards to smaller vehicles. I mean, we're a four-wheeler now, golf cart town, and I often take my four-wheeler down that road, along the boardwalk, because I'm going to Susie's shop and I'm buying baskets or gifts or whatever, or I'm taking something to her. I think that's super easy and probably maintains the integrity, addresses the concerns. And because we are a four-wheeler town, that seems like an easy thing to say, that it's four-wheeler pedestrian only, with the one exception, of course, would be for residents that live there. I mean, to me, they should have that right without question. They don't want to damage their boardwalk. They're probably the most careful of anybody. And then the other thing would be, of course, any maintenance or emergency services to have, unabashed access. But the other question that I have is in regards to enforcement. You can put something together and say, okay, you can't do that. But if nobody's enforcing it, then it's not worth saying. So I think that that's a big part of looking at that. In regards to Fulmore, I think that we can't really put Fulmore and the boardwalk in the same basket. And the reason I say that is because Fulmore is unimproved. It's really non-existent as far as structurally, and you cannot take a vehicle there as it is now. So there's like a long ways to go before we even get to a place where we limit vehicles. We can't even take vehicles. And there's other places in town like Spillum. I've talked to Heidi about that recently, where you do have properties that are owned by people here in the community or just as an investment, and they can't access their property. This is something that really needs to be thought about as the city makes rules about access, to ensure that the city's looking at what's good for the city, and good for the city is development of properties in the city and having them able to be developed, and someone to put a home there and to connect to water and sewer, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess I'm thinking that Fulmore property kind of can't be addressed at the same time because it's a whole different beast. I guess that's it, but all good things. But I would hate to not be able to take my four-wheeler down the boardwalk. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jenny. Appreciate that. Liz, anyone else from the public cares to weigh in on this?
No, we don't have anybody else from the public at this time.
Okay. All right, we'll go and bring it back to council. And again, this was just a discussion only for draft ordinance. I think, just hearing everybody weigh in, I think it's worth, continuing the discussion. I think there could be something, good that comes out of this. Certainly there'd be a lot of public input. Again, my intent would be just kind of, maybe get something, in writing that, protects, people on the boardwalk, their way of life down there, and then certainly doesn't, restrict, all motorized access, but we've got some sideboards on it, so that we, can maintain the integrity, obviously, of the boardwalk. And then, and then we'd kind of flesh out all the other, maybe any of the other areas that over on, Fulmore and Block that, need to be looked at, whether they stay part of this or drop out, or if it's a separate piece, or however that comes about. So, again, certainly all good discussion, good points, from everyone there.
Mayor, if I may.
Yep, go ahead, Heidi.
In the interest of council, if you would like to continue with this discussion, do you want to refer it to the planning commission for more discussion based on feedback we've received at tonight's meeting, or have us come back to the council in the future? What would be your guys' wish?
I'd probably like to see it cleaned up just a little bit more before it goes to planning, to get a little bit more intent. And I certainly wouldn't want it going completely rogue, based on, what some of the initial thoughts are, I guess.
Would you like us to bring it back or clean it up ourselves and then with an accompanying memo from tonight's meeting and take it forward?
Yeah, I think we can look at doing one more cleanup, if you were good with that, based on some of the input, and then then have one more round of discussions on it.
On the council level?
Yeah, and then we could pass it on to to planning and zoning.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. All right. Last item here, city manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will try to keep it brief. And just some of the items at the end are just placeholders for future discussion or as they move forward. But starting with the pertinent items at the beginning, city manager's report on the lay down page 3. We did have a visit from the Alaska State Fire Marshal's office last week, last Friday, and they inspected the commercial buildings in town that have public meeting areas, one of them being this building. Overall, I really want to give big thanks to Harbor Master Jant Peterson and of course Radzi, who's helped along this process and after as well, to keep our fire extinguishers up to date, to keep our safety measures in place. Really, we did not have a whole lot of overall feedback. One of the exit signs out in the entryway needed to be the battery to be updated, or a light bulb in order for it to stay lit up in case of a power outage. We had an outlet that needed covered. I wrote on the report to hang a fire hydrant in the library. Jan pointed that out to me. That was a quick typo, sorry. Fire extinguisher in the library with some signage. It's on the floor, it just needs to be hung up. Some basic things that needed to occur in the building. However, we did have 2 items that were a little bit more significant and will have a potential cost associated with them. And that is that our fire alarm system for this building is supposed to have an annual inspection. And it wasn't tagged, and I can't say, nor did anybody in the office have memory of when the last time that was. So that's a little disheartening. That's on the list now to also have that happen for this building. We're obtaining quotes to get somebody here to do that. And we need to rewire our Christmas tree box out on the corner so that is up to code. So looking for quotes for both of those things. Otherwise, most of the other items have already been taken care of. It was a decent overall visit with those individuals. Next, outhouses and porta potties. We received a quote from Superior Septic to come and pump our outhouses for $3,100, and that includes the ferry ticket over here. It would be a quick one-day trip, otherwise it would be more. And their priority being Jack Loft, airport, and then outside beach. RV park is looking pretty good. It gets minimal use out there. So I'm not too concerned about that one this season. In discussion with Public Works and thinking through maintenance moving forward of these facilities, especially Jack Loft and Airport. Those tanks are both under 100 gallons a piece, not very large. Operator Cameron said they used to pump them monthly. That's not something with our equipment and capacity that we have been able to continue maintaining for many years now. And we've definitely seen the maintenance and service of those buildings dwindle. My recommendation would be to actually close up those restrooms in the winter time when there's less traffic through those areas to limit the amount of times that we need to have them pumped, because $3,100 ticket to bring somebody over and pump those a couple times a year is expensive. And I really do think it's in the best interest of Seldovia to have a good presentation to the public, and those are not a good presentation at this point. And then open them up in the summer and focus our efforts on keeping them clean, and then pumping once or twice. We're looking at alternatives of whether that means we actually pump them out and then hold them in another facility such as the RV park to have a pump out there. At the end of the season, big problem with that is that we do find in the RV park, not as much, but definitely the outside beach, there's a lot of bottles, cans, things that get thrown into those porta potties that our guys cannot suck up with a truck, which is part of the reason why we don't put those things down we don't put that sewage down our septic system right now, with how much maintenance our septic system also needs, which is why we're in this precarious spot. So looking into that, and then we moved some trash cans around as a side note, and took the one from the city park, was a bigger capacity, 2 outside beach. So we've got the big green cans there, and we had the brown cans we were going to put back at city park. But through this discussion, I suggested that we actually move that can to outside beach, right in front of the porta potties, so that hopefully that can eliminate some of that trash that's going down the porta potty. Anyways, maybe that's all too much information, but I just want to let you know that unless I get any kickback or feedback otherwise, I plan to lock up those restrooms once they're pumped this weekend. And not the outside beach RV park, just airport and Jackloff, because they're such small capacity. And they can still use the Harbor Master or other places. For the rest of the report here, FY23 preliminary sales tax received. I just wanted to point out that we did receive this report from both Kenai Peninsula Borough and our remote seller sales tax. And it was right on par with what we expected, except the remote seller sales tax was over 3 times what was estimated. We couldn't really get a good estimation of that number because last year was the first full year. Before that was only a partial year. But for FY23, our preliminary report back was $71,257.42. Water service connection inventory grant. I spoke about that at the last meeting, that it is a requirement of the municipality to provide an inventory of all of our water service connection lines, looking for lead, but they want a list of all the materials used on these lines, and that is required to be completed by April 24th, 2024. There is funding through the drinking water program for this project, and initially they thought that they would be able to have individuals come out into communities and assist, but they've come back since and said they just don't have the capacity or manpower for that. So instead, they're going to take the grant, divvy it up, allocate it out, and rely on communities to provide it themselves. So a little bit more work on our end. We'll work through that process as soon as we find out how much funding we receive and what that looks like in-house, and we'll come back to the council with that. I did want to also point out that there's a Thriving Communities grant program that just opened up the next round of funding. It's a technical grant, and it relies heavily on partnerships. So if you have a couple of organizations that are willing to partner towards a project or towards the technical components of the project, they provide funding for that. My initial thought is it's not a lot of legwork, but you do need the partnerships. And I have a list of potential individuals, including Seldovia Village Tribe, DOT, City of Homer, some of the other entities that we've worked with recently. It can even be Chamber of Commerce, Seldovia Arts Council. They said even artists or individuals in the community, to see if there's interest in partnering with the city. And that requirement for the partnership would be, that they would like help lend a voice or help out at meetings or help, publicize that these conversations are happening pertaining to this grant. And it's for infrastructure funding. So then again, thinking initially that would be maybe a good fit for our harbor, our city dock, and Jackloff. Future technical assistance on how to engineering reports and overview information in order to pursue future funding opportunities. CDS request follow-up. We reached out to VSW for an updated cost estimate, CRW for an updated cost estimate for our raw water transmission line and Block Street replacement project. I specifically asked for a value engineering cost estimate per Mayor Campbell's words, and received the quotes back there in your packet for quite a bit more money as the last cost estimates according to 2024 dollars. So gonna think through that and what that looks like with need gap funding for either project at this point, if CDBG can be used or if there's other opportunities, and bring that back to council. Rural Cap has a program for affordable housing that they partner with individuals in a community, and the individual has to put so many hours in and they build a house. This is something that has been going on in the Soldotna area for quite a while. They are on they just broke ground on their last 8 houses out of 100 that they built in that area. And our planning commission chair, Randy Sweet, found this article about it and put together this information and brought to the planning commission, wanting to see if there was interest on the planning commission level to find more information and pursue this opportunity. And there was. So she then was able to reach back out to Rural Cap, and they are also interested in discussing with Seldovia what that would look like in the future. Bring this up in case any of the council members want to be involved with that, or we can have a joint work session was suggested between planning commission and council to hear from Rural Cap and what that could potentially mean for Seldovia. So looking forward to hearing more about that. Tsunami Ready, you heard from Aviva. So I went through the application process with her, and it actually appears that we have met all the requirements for the application. It's just a matter of having the time to fill it out and send it in, which I'm hoping to do tomorrow morning. And then them reviewing it and getting back if there's anything missing before we can have that designation for Tsunami Ready and Storm Ready. And then we can discuss how you guys want to celebrate that in speaking with Mark Ball and Crystal Collier with SVT and Aviva. It sounds like there is interest on that end to have it be like a whole community. It's a great way to showcase our partnership, and that as a community, we're fully tsunami ready and invested in being prepared moving forward. Governor's office and DEC commissioner visit tomorrow. We have a few staff members from the governor's office and the commissioner of the DEC coming to Seldovia to visit and discuss needs of Seldovia. Like a DEC commissioner is particularly interested in sewer or septic systems. There's some things happening out the road that they have been made aware of through our representative Vance. And then of course we have our own septic things happening here. So definitely going to discuss that, but we invited a member of Chamber of Commerce, who's also our council member, Ashley Keithley, invited SVT, and then if anybody else on council or other individuals want to join, it's not, we haven't arranged it as a public meeting, but just more like stakeholders having a chance to sit down and speak with these individuals just about the needs of Seldovia moving forward. So please let me know if you're interested in attending. I'll pick them up and drive them around, and then we'll come back here to meet. USDA public notice requirements for village safe water projects. I know you guys have heard a lot about this. This is a requirement that I speak about it again, even though we keep it as a placeholder so that Liz can put it in the minutes and it can go to the USDA. That the city of Seldovia received approval from VSW for 3 projects on June 30th. The state is now applying for the federal portion of the funding to the USDA's Rural Development Agency. Part of that requirement is meeting minutes of a public meeting held informing the general public regarding the development of any proposed projects. These projects through the USDA are as follows: Seldovia Water and Wastewater System Evaluation Planning Project. Those are those 8 requests that we had that have got wrapped up into one. Seldovia Slough Sewer Improvements Construction Project and the Seldovia Wastewater Treatment Facility Improvements Design Project. On a side note, that Seldovia Slough Sewer Improvements Construction Project, I know that the USDA is working on funding for that, and they just put out a series of notice requirements for the environmental review through town. We helped facilitate that process and didn't receive any feedback. So those projects are moving forward as they need to. And project activity updates. Commercial Business District Subcommittee schedule. Just want to let you know that there is a meeting scheduled for this Wednesday, and then there'll be twice a month continuing on through January, with potentially only one meeting in December. Clerk Diamond made an amazing webpage. getting dry mouth here. Specific for the commercial business subcommittee, that's on our city of Seldovia website. So if you go to there, you can see all the information that so far has been pointed out for discussion or for future discussions, and then more information as it comes. I'm working on a history context memo right now that initially I thought was going to be 1998 moving forward. And then during the meeting, it was asked if we could go back to urban renewal and then earthquake, and then received response afterwards pre-earthquake, and actually found some amazing information that will be put in that and hopefully go out tomorrow. DEC off-cycle scoring mentioned earlier, we've got a score of 87, which is great. It means that we will qualify for the state revolving fund program, which is a portion of the sewer project that was ineligible for funding through VSW. So that also requires an environmental review process that's on my docket to complete here in the near future. But the funding so far should be taken care of. Tsunami inundation zone mapping and brochure, we talked about at the last council meeting during the city manager's report. I'm meeting with Mark Ball with SVT and Brett Higman later this week. We're just gonna sit down with the maps and start drawing some lines and making some recommendations for the brochure. And then we can provide those recommendations to the prospective entities where they need to go, and move forward to hopefully get a final draft of the product. Personnel policy staff review has been complete and it's on its way to legal. We already talked about the boat haul out trailer. You guys saw Title 15 is on the agenda as an introduction, set to be introduced at the next meeting. Holly Wells, the attorney who's been working with Layla and myself on this, wants to come in person for that presentation. She thinks it's important to be able to be present because there are some substantial changes in the fact that it's a full repeal and enactment. A lot of the languages and things that we're working on up to date, or that are still up to date, is still in there, but certainly some other changes are in there that she recommended. So please take a look at that. And lastly, I want to give a real big welcome to VPSO Amy Morgan. She passed the academy, is back in town. First day back on duty after academy was today. Saw her and Officer Patterson up at the school, at the city, going around, making introductions and speaking with people. So welcome them aboard. Everything else is just keeping track of where we're at and where we're going. And please let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you, Heidi. Yeah, very informative report. Lots of good information on there. Obviously way more than we can cover in a manager's report, but appreciate the detail and all the specifics of where we're at with everything ongoing and ever changing. So any questions or comments from council? Okay.
Mayor Campbell,
Yep. Go ahead, John.
what's the status of our trash truck?
Through the mayor, I am really glad you brought that up. There is one located in Anchorage that does meet our needs. It's not the creme de la creme with the steak sides, but we're hoping Mayor Campbell will look at it tomorrow. I can share it with you just to see it's in our price range and it's here. So at least take a look at it. It meets all the other qualifiers. Yeah.
Sounds good. Okay. Let's see. Item O, informational items not requiring action. City of Seldovia regular municipal election will be held next Tuesday, October 3rd, 2023. Absentee in-person voting is available at the city office until election day. Election results will be certified at the next regular city council meeting, which will be on October 9th, 2023. Item P, executive session, none. Item Q, council and mayor comments concerning items not on the agenda. Keith Lee.
Nothing this evening.
Okay, Sweat.
Oh, I have a lot. Question, is this actually my last council meeting?
Through the mayor? No, Councilmember Sweat, you will still be the sitting council member to certify the elections.
Okay,
next
then I'll
meeting.
save all my comments till then.
Thank you for that. Okay, Rojas.
Okay, Bobby, can't wait for that final night of yours. Thank you, everyone, for your hard work, and have a good night. Thanks.
Thanks, Vivian. Kennedy.
Nothing further.
Peyton.
The same. Excellent report, Heidi. Thanks for all the work, you guys. Appreciate the discussion tonight. And to all the public that came tonight, appreciate you guys coming.
Okay, thank you, Harmony. Our next meeting will be a regular meeting. It'll be held on October 9th, 2023 at 6 p.m. And I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
We have a second?
Second.
Okay, any objection? Okay, hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate all the work tonight. And thank you, Heidi and Liz and Radzi. Everyone have a good night.
Good night, Mr. Mayor.
Good night.